US President Donald Trump is preparing to speak with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, but this is raising eyebrows with his plan to discuss dividing certain assets between Ukraine and Russia. As officials in the US expressed hope for a ceasefire, the battlefield tells a different story. One of retreat, firepower, and unrelenting warfare. Here's a report.
Ukrainian forces continue to pull back under Russia's superior firepower. The key town of Sudzha in Russia's western Kursk region has fallen after 7 months of Ukrainian control. Evacuees speak of fear, confusion, and an uncertain future as Moscow tightens its grip.
I don't understand what this war is for. We are very much waiting for peace because we feel sorry for Russian soldiers, for Ukrainian soldiers, for all people in general. We really want America to somehow influence Russia's friendship with Ukraine because we are brotherly nations. We are Slavs. Both Russians and Ukrainians are Slavs. This is just some kind of fratricidal going on.
These images released by Russia's defense ministry show a chaotic withdrawal. Abandoned tanks, artillery, and US-supplied M1 Abrams vehicles left behind. Once a symbol of NATO's military might, now these war machines lie in ruins. As the battle rages across Ukraine, Kyiv hits back, launching a drone attack on southern Russia, igniting a massive blaze at an oil refinery. Moscow responds with brute force, unleashing nearly 200 drones in a relentless assault on Ukrainian cities. US President Donald Trump is confident about his direct talks with his Russian counterpart. This could mark a turning point.
I think we'll be talking about land. It's a lot of land. It's a lot different than it was before the wars, And we'll be talking about land. We'll be talking about power plants. That's up, that's a big question. But I think we have a lot of it already discussed very much by both sides.
You'll ask him.
Ukraine and Russia.
You'll ask him.
We're already talking about that. Dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
The talks comes after Trump's envoy met Vladimir Putin in Moscow, but Trump's proposal to divide certain assets raises eyebrows in Ukraine and Europe. His approach suggests a negotiation that could reshape Ukraine's borders, something Kyiv has firmly opposed. Putin, while open to a ceasefire, warns of serious questions about its implementation. As war rages on, all eyes would be on the Trump-Putin talks. Can it bring a halt to the 3-year-long brutal war? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Mr. Gabriel Noronha is a former special advisor for Iran at the U.S. State Department under Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Executive Director of Polaris National Security, is now joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Noronha, good to see you and thank you very much for making time for us. U.S. President Donald Trump says that during his discussions with President Vladimir Putin, 2 things will be on the table, and that is land and power plants and also dividing assets between Ukraine and Russia. What your thoughts?
These talks are going to likely have a phone call tomorrow. And what is really important here is to understand that some of the land that has been occupied by Russia is some of Ukraine's most valuable land. They have some of the most heavy industry there. They have Ukraine's largest power plant is called Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, 6 reactors. Again, one of the largest nuclear power plants in all of Europe. It's just under Russian control, and it's been under Russian control for nearly 3 years now. But it's very close to Ukraine's front lines. And this is something that the Ukrainians want back into part of their territory because, again, it was providing power for all of Ukraine. The Russians actually turned that power plant over into the Russian electricity grid. And so that's something that's going to be a very key controversial asset to be divided up. Again, other assets include things like steel mills, factories, some of which are controlled by Russia today. But any peace agreement is going to have Russia give up some of the territory that it has already taken if they want to get assets back that are frozen under U.S. sanctions.
Mr. Noronha, very many people had been waiting for a formal discussion, a face-to-face discussion between President Trump and President Vladimir Putin, but now it's a phone call. What do you perceive their discussion will be, and what impact will that be going forward?
Well, one thing we know is that it's a phone call rather than a meeting, partly because Putin wants larger meetings. He wants more FaceTime with President Trump. And President Trump is saying, you're only going to get that if you start behaving well, you start giving concessions towards peace. So the phone call is really a sign that they've made some progress, but not the full progress that would be needed to get a meeting. Putin wants to convince Trump of various propaganda pieces of his own. He wants to convince President Trump that Russia is winning and that he has the upper hand in negotiations, versus Ukraine is trying to signal to President Trump that they are actually able to hold on longer. One key thing for President Trump is, again, bridging these divides from both sides to try to get them to make the concessions that are ultimately necessary for a deal. President Putin has been making very maximalist demands, claiming that he wants all troops out of Ukraine entirely. He wants their forces reduced. He wants to limit their spending. He basically wants to be able to carve up Ukraine the next time he invades. And that's something that I hope President Trump stands firm against.
Mr. Gabriel Noronha, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.